Hello and welcome back to Art for Everybody. I am Evi Steiner-Böhm. I'm an artist from Germany and my two little assistants here are called Pedro and Rosa. In today's video I would like to show you how you can draw trees, and we're going to start with the trunk and the branches, and after that I'm going to show you how you can draw a tree with foliage. For today's video I'm going to use rough drawing paper and just two pencils, a HB and a 4B, but you could of course use other mediums like an ink pen or fine liners or even charcoal. Now when drawing trees we basically have to find a solution for two problems. The first one is to draw the skeleton of the tree, meaning the trunk and the branches and how the branches come off the trunk. And the second one is how to draw the foliage. We're going to look at the trunk and the branches first. Trunks and branches are basically cylinders, and if you know how to draw a cylinder, this shouldn't be too much of a problem. If you see a cylinder from the side, it looks like a rectangle. And if you shade it with a light part and a dark part, it's fairly easy. You do it like this. Now, if you see the cylinder from above, you look down on it, you start seeing an oval up here. And you have the same oval down there. And if you shade that now, you can either do it with forming lines, meaning you follow the oval with your lines to shade from dark to light or from light to dark. You could also mix it with vertical lines. And if you see the cylinder above you, it looks the other way round. You see it like standing on the head. You have your oval down here. And your forming lines, of course, follow again the oval, and it looks like standing on the head. And if you shade your tree or your cylinder like that with forming lines, there is one mistake that would ruin the impression of roundness. And that is, if you do your forming lines correctly, the main lines like this, and you start shading now and you draw horizontal lines, that of course makes it look all wrong. So if you shade your branches, your trunks like this with forming lines, you have to be very careful to follow the oval. It's a good thing to practice these forming lines, and you can even do that while watching TV, and you can create crazy forms like simply drawing some cylindrical forms, and this one can come out of here. And as soon as you start using these forming lines, can you see that? You give the viewer the impression that you have cylindrical objects going into different directions. And we will need that when we want to draw the trunk of the tree and the branches that go backwards, forwards, and sideways. And as I said, it's really fun practicing that. Can you see, as soon as you start making your ovals in one direction or the other, it makes your cylinders go backward and forward or sideward. And of course, you can practice shading with forming lines, but of course you can shade the other way round. You can even, use cross-hatching for shading and then set accents with some forming lines. And I've prepared some examples for you. This one I made with an ink pen, and you can create all sorts of crazy forms with that. Have fun with it. And the more often you do it, of course, the better you get. I've taken a photograph for you of a tree that has been cut back many times, because I think for beginners it's easier if you can concentrate on some branches that come off the trunk than a tree that has naturally grown and of course has many, many branches going in different directions. And I've already prepared a drawing for you and made copies of it. That's a good trick as well. If you draw the outlines of your tree and then make copies, you can try out the different forms of shading the tree. And this one, of course, is with forming lines. And as you can see, as soon as I make my oval downwards, it makes the branch come towards me. And if I go like this and even turn, the branch goes in different directions and it goes backwards. And if the lines are kind of straight, they look straight. And as soon as I start bending my ovals, again, the branch goes into the background. Same down here. See, this is really very, very easy. Now, the second way of shading the tree is, of course, mixing the two styles. That means you use the forming lines only to indicate in which direction you want your branch to go, and do the rest with shading from light to dark, as you learned with drawing cylinders. This is the easier way, of course, and it looks more natural. And you can, of course, always add some forming lines, short ones, longer ones, but just use these lines as accents and not as the main way of shading. Now, with this sort of shading, it's easier to integrate the structure of the bark of your tree. You simply do the shading first from dark to light, and then you give the viewer the impression of the bark. One last trick for shading the skeleton of your tree is to exaggerate the lights and the darks of your branches, meaning you can draw the one in the foreground a lot darker, and those that are in the background, they stay a lot lighter than they are in reality. This is a trick we also use in landscape painting, where it says if things go to the background, they get paler and bluer. And with drawing, of course, we don't have the color, but we can make it paler, meaning we can make it go lighter. So if I take this drawing and I make the branch in the foreground very dark, and the one that goes into the background, make that very, very light, even if in reality it isn't as light as that, it fades into the background. The next problem we want to look at now is if your tree has leaves. And I'm going to use a photograph of my son Stephen for that. He is a professional photographer and designer. And by the way, he is also the father of Pedro Endrosa and the co-author of my books on painting and drawing in German. When drawing a tree with leaves, you have to find a way to simplify the foliage, because you can, of course, not draw every single leaf. And you can do that by using various kind of abbreviations. You can do, random lines to indicate that there are many leaves. You could use circles, half circles. You could use long strokes. Short strokes. You could use points, or even use hatching or cross-hatching, and combine that with some of the abbreviations you tried out before. I mostly do trees with random lines, but of course any other way is correct as well. A very common mistake with beginners is that they do not pay attention to how the tree ends in thin branches, and that the outline is very irregular. If I watch my tree closely, I see that there are many thin ends, something like that. And it does not end in thick black lines like lots of beginners do. They go like this. And then, of course, the tree looks all flat. So if we draw our tree, we make the outline with very, very fine lines, because we want to override these lines later with our foliage. We do not want to see a big fat contour around our tree, but we want to end our tree in fine branches with leaves on it. All I do is I mark the end of my tree, and I mark some of the darker parts so that I know where to go darker with my shading. And maybe, some of the branches that go off from the trunk. Where I can see them through the foliage. And then shading the tree works like shading any other object as well. You have lighter parts, darker parts, and the best way, of course, is to start with the lightest tone. And that's what I'm going to do now. I do the foliage with random lines and just do the whole tree now with these random lines in a very light tone. And as you can see, I overwrite the contours from the beginning so that you can't see them anymore. And after I've done that, I go over it again and start making the dark parts darker. And if you do not see the dark parts, you can always use your logic, because if you know that the light comes from here, you know that this part of the tree has to be lighter as a whole than this part of the tree. And of course you have lighter parts in the shadow as well. And so you have very dark shades of gray down here. And in the middle of your tree. And down here, it has to be the darkest part of the foliage, because there is no light at all down here. And of course, you have the same shadow down here, and also beneath the lighter parts of your groups of leaves here. And just be careful that your dark parts don't get too regular, that you do not, I'm going to make it wrong now, that you do not make forms like this one. Just make them gradually go into the lighter part. And as you can see, your tree slowly emerges from the paper. And in the end, what you do is you make some very distinct accents with a 4B, with very sharp lines. So that you have clear values from very light to really, really dark. And also make sure, if you draw branches, that you follow the logic of the tree, so that you have a thick trunk in the middle and you have thinner branches going off to both sides. And that if you draw one here, it has to follow up here. Then it can go off into different directions. And in the end, you can also give your tree some very thin branches out here with a couple of leaves that go over the outline of your tree so that it looks natural. So this is all for today. I hope you enjoyed the lesson, and I hope you will join me again next time when we are going to paint this tree with acrylics. Until then, have a good time. See you soon.